When you find yourself in the heat of a confrontation, someone raises their voice, accusations fly, perhaps even thinly veiled threats or manipulations, you can feel your heart rate spike. Your palms sweat. Your instinct may be to fire back, to defend yourself, to stand your ground with passion. That response feels natural, human, even honorable, but it is not powerful. Let's look at the reality. In any confrontation, the person who controls their emotions controls the situation. This idea isn't new. It's ancient. In fact, it's deeply Machiavellian. Niccolò Machiavelli, often misunderstood as a cold schemer, didn't advocate cruelty. He advocated realism. He observed that passion might fuel revolutions but rarely wins calculated power struggles. For Machiavelli, effective leadership demanded a detachment from personal emotion. The same principle applies when you're confronted by a colleague, a rival, even someone close to you. If you can't separate your emotions from your response, you've already lost the upper hand. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you don't feel anything. It means you feel in full, but you choose not to be led by those feelings. That's power. Think of it like this. When someone attacks you verbally, they're often not trying to win on logic. They're fishing for a reaction. They want to provoke you. Why? Because emotion makes people sloppy. It drags them into weak positions. You defend yourself too soon. You admit to things you shouldn't have. You lose your composure, your authority, your leverage. But if you respond with calm, unmoved, composed, eyes locked and voice steady, you instantly change the dynamic. You deny them what they want. You begin to dominate without saying much at all. This isn't about being cold or robotic. Quite the opposite. It's about being aware, deeply aware of what you're feeling, recognizing it in real time, but refusing to let it be the driver. That level of self-mastery is rare, which is why it's feared and respected. You can be internally furious, stunned, or hurt. But if you've trained to regulate that reaction on the surface, you appear in control. And in a confrontation, appearance becomes reality. Now, people often confuse emotional detachment with weakness or apathy. But there's nothing helpless about someone who can listen to an insult, hear someone question their character or achievements, and instead of retaliating immediately, let silence hang heavy in. Air cracks a small smile and replies with precision. That is not weakness, it's dominance with elegance. It says you're too secure to be shaken by noise. This mindset doesn't come overnight. In fact, it's counterintuitive to how most of us are raised. We're taught to stand up for ourselves, to speak our truth emotionally. But Machiavelli would urge us to ask, what will that truth cost us in this moment? What's the goal here? Is it to feel better temporarily, or to come away with your position strengthened? Detachment helps you choose long-term strategy over short-term satisfaction. Every confrontation is a test of ego, of identity, of discipline. And the thing most people don't understand is that explosive emotion is predictable. It's expected. What's unexpected, what's disarming, is stillness. When someone expects rage and receives reason, they're caught off guard. And in that moment, you've seized control without appearing forceful. You've become a mirror, reflecting their chaos back at them, not absorbing it. That is deeply unsettling for most people, and Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. True power doesn't always have to roar. Sometimes it whispers, and in doing so, it makes others shout just to be heard. Practicing emotional detachment also gives you time. While the other person burns fuel trying to get a rise out of you, you're conserving energy, observing, deciding. You can spot inconsistencies in their argument. You can read the room. You can prepare your next 3 steps while they're still stuck in the heat of the moment. That's high-level strategy, moving with control while others stumble over their feelings. And here's the secret. The calmer you appear, the more people start to doubt their own position. Even if you say little or nothing at all, composure exudes confidence, and confidence poisons the attacker's certainty. Suddenly, they question themselves. Why isn't she reacting? Why isn't he angry? They start retreating from their original stance, not because you overpowered them physically or emotionally, but because you didn't give them anything to fight against. In the Machiavellian mindset, calm isn't the absence of conflict. It's the decision not to be governed by it. It's knowing your temper is a tool, not a master. And when confrontation arises, your silence, your patience, your unshaken focus can become your greatest offensive weapon. They expect fire, you give them ice, and ice in the long game always preserves power. Stay calm and become untouchable. In a confrontation, most people believe the loudest voice wins. They raise their tone, pound the table, talk over others, thinking it signals strength. But if there's one thing a Machiavellian mindset teaches us, it's that real influence doesn't lie in volume. It lies in narrative. Power comes not from who shouts the hardest, but from who controls the meaning behind the exchange. Let others escalate. Let them talk circles around themselves trying to sound authoritative. You don't need to compete in that chaos. Your strength comes from your ability to frame the narrative carefully, calmly, and in a way that subtly steers the encounter in your favor. That's where your influence lives, not just in what you say, but in how you say it, and when you choose to say it. If you respond emotionally and raise your voice to match theirs, you're stepping onto their battlefield. You're granting them power by fighting on their terms. But if you remain composed, speaking in measured, deliberate tones, you shift the entire energy of the confrontation. People lean in to hear what you say. They become more alert, more cautious. Calm is disarming because it's not what they expect. Think about the last time someone stayed completely steady while being confronted. Didn't it make everything they said feel somehow more true, more convincing? There's a reason for that. Stillness in the storm suggests certainty. This is about presence, not force. When you speak with intention, when you consciously choose your words instead of spilling them out impulsively, your control becomes evident. You're no longer reacting, you're leading, and the person who leads the tone leads the conversation. While others fixate on emotional exchanges and trying to win, each sentence you're busy shaping perception. Because in any conflict, it is the perception of truth, not necessarily the truth itself, that often decides the outcome. Now, that idea managing perception can sound manipulative, but if you strip away the emotional charge behind that word, what you're really doing is making sure your message lands. You can have the best argument, the strongest logic, but if it's delivered in a frantic, defensive, or scattered way, people won't hear it. They'll remember the noise. They'll remember the chaos. But if you speak quietly, intentionally, if you create calm in an environment of tension suddenly, you become the most credible voice in the room. There's an old idea, when everyone is shouting, whisper. In that contrast, you're instantly seen as someone who doesn't feel the need to perform. That's how power communicates. It doesn't try to convince through force. It doesn't beg to be understood. It simply is. And whether in leadership, negotiation, or personal confrontation, the same principle applies. The loudest voice might command attention for a moment, but the voice that owns the narrative commands influence that lasts. Consider this. People often remember how they felt during a conflict more than the actual content. If you make them feel exposed, overwhelmed, or ridiculed, they remember that. But if you remain calm and respectful, even while being sharp, you make them question themselves, not you. You don't need to shout to get your point across. You can ask one well-placed question that reframes the entire discussion, and it will do more than any monologue ever could. That's narrative control. A Machiavellian approach understands that appearances matter. The way you speak, the pauses you take, even your body language, it all tells a story. Your goal in confrontation isn't just to survive it. It's to rise from it stronger. You shouldn't aim to beat someone down emotionally or verbally. You want to walk away with more credibility, not less. Calm, assertive storytelling allows you to do just that. It positions you as unshakable, not because you dominated emotionally, but because you never lost the thread of your own message. And make no mistake, people are watching. In every confrontation, whether it's one-on-one or in front of others, your response teaches people how to treat you. If they see you remain composed under pressure, if they see that you don't flinch when challenged, they learn that you are someone who's grounded, someone who can't be manipulated or thrown off course. You become the kind of person they'd rather align with than oppose. Remember, too, that your tone can carry implications your words don't even need to say. A calm voice wrapped around a pointed statement cuts deep. It shows that you're in control, not because you have nothing to fear, but because you understand that real power doesn't need to perform. It knows strategically that those who keep their voice steady also keep their mind sharp. So when confrontation arises, resist the instinct to raise your voice. Step back from the temptation to overwhelm or outshout someone. Instead, settle into your center. Listen first, choose your words carefully, and speak not to win the moment, but to shape the meaning behind it. Because in the end, it's not the energy you bring that gives you power. It's the story you leave behind. Control the narrative, and you control the outcome. In any confrontation, people instinctively prepare to defend themselves mentally, verbally, sometimes even physically. But very few take the time to understand the person standing across from them. And yet, that's exactly where real power in confrontation lies, not just in knowing your own strengths, but in carefully studying the mind of your opponent. A Machiavellian mindset isn't just about control. It's about reading the playing field, player by player, and knowing exactly where the cracks are. Because when you understand someone's weaknesses, emotional habits, insecurities, hidden fears, you suddenly gain options. You no longer have to force your way through a conversation or conflict. You navigate it, weaving around resistance, pushing just where there's give, applying pressure not randomly, but with surgical precision. And ironically, you can stay calm more easily when you're aware of these things. Why? Because you're not guessing. You're not trying to overpower. You're observing, calculating. Even when tensions are high, you've already assessed where your advantage lies. This mindset starts with the assumption that everyone is vulnerable somewhere. It could be arrogance. It could be a need for approval. It could be fear of appearing weak, fear of being wrong, or unresolved resentment. Most people carry these inner conflicts with them into every room, whether they're aware of them or not. And during confrontation, those vulnerabilities rise to the surface. That's when they become easy to spot for someone who's watching closely. You have to listen not just to what someone says, but how they say it. Their tone, their pauses, the way their eyes change when certain topics come up. People telegraph far more than they realize, and in heated moments, these signals multiply. A Machiavellian thinker doesn't get distracted by the noise. Instead, you watch for patterns, Does this person get defensive when questioned? Are they obsessed with being right? Do they interrupt to feel dominant? That's not just challenging behavior, that's useful data. And once you recognize a pattern, you can start to do something subtle but powerful. Guide the confrontation on your terms. Let's say you're in a tense discussion with someone who has a deep need to appear competent in front of others. If you notice that, you don't attack their competence, you stroke it. You acknowledge their knowledge, their experience. Why? Because now they're less defensive and more willing to listen. You've bypassed the shield. And once the shield is down, they're more easily influenced. You didn't defeat them. You outmaneuvered them without them knowing. In many ways, this strategy echoes the thinking of an experienced diplomat or a chess player. You don't make a move to make noise. You make a move that creates ripple effects. Every calculated response works toward your desired outcome. That's what sets a Machiavellian approach apart from reactive emotion. It's never trying to win the moment. It's playing for the end game. Now here's the part where people often struggle. They worry that this way of thinking makes them manipulative. But remember, manipulation isn't about strategy, it's about intent. If your goal in understanding someone's weakness is to humiliate or exploit them, sure, you're walking a dangerous line. But if your goal is to de-escalate, seize control, and move the confrontation in a direction that serves your values or goals, you're not manipulating, you're leading. And here's the thing, your opponent, whether they're a colleague, a client, or someone in your personal life, is likely walking into the conversation with nothing more than mood, emotion, and ego. Meanwhile, you're coming in with awareness. You've studied the field. You've noted how they behave under pressure. That gives you an enormous strategic edge. It allows you to remain calm, not because you're disinterested or disconnected, but because you're prepared. Prepared people don't panic, they plan. You can tell when someone is bluffing by how quickly they escalate. You can tell when someone is insecure by how often they interrupt. And you can tell when someone is desperate for control by how uncomfortable they get in silence. These are all openings not to exploit, but to influence. When you respond with precision to what they reveal, even unconsciously, you're reshaping the interaction moment by moment, all while staying calm, collected, and purposeful. There's a calm that comes not just from inner peace, but from inner preparation. If you've mapped out the terrain, if you've learned the other person's emotional triggers, behavioral tendencies, biases, you no longer fear surprises. You expect them, you even use them. That's how Machiavelli thought about conflict, not as something to explode into, but something to navigate like a trap-ridden corridor where each step must be deliberate. And truthfully, most people aren't that hard to read. They tell on themselves every day, through their need to be liked, their fear of being questioned, or their rush to assert dominance. All you need is the patience to see it. Once you do, you gain the most powerful asset in any confrontation, quiet control, rooted not in force, but in insight. Know your opponent, and you never walk into battle blind. There's a moment in every confrontation where tension fills the air, where both sides have said just enough to hang on the edge of something more explosive, and then silence. That pause is uncomfortable. For most people, it's unbearable. It feels like a handbrake on the conversation, an awkward emptiness that begs to be filled. And more often than not, it's in that discomfort that people reveal the most. A Machiavellian mindset understands this instinctively. Silence isn't a lack of response, it's a calculated weapon. We're conditioned to see silence as weakness. If you don't answer right away, people assume you're uncertain or intimidated. But that's only true when silence is used unintentionally. When you choose silence deliberately at exactly the right moment, it becomes something much more powerful. It becomes your pressure point, your way of signaling that you control the tempo of the confrontation, not the person bringing noise. You see, silence unnerves people because it forces them into their own thoughts. When you remain quiet after someone says something aggressive, provocative, or even manipulative, they immediately begin questioning themselves. Did I go too far? Why didn't that work? What is he thinking? That pause introduces doubt not for you, but for them. And once that seed of doubt is planted, you've already shifted control. Most people want instant feedback, especially in conflict. It's a kind of validation. They want to know their shot landed. If you give them that reaction, if you rush to respond or defend, you confirm that they hit a nerve. But if you pause, if you give space without expression, without urgency, suddenly they're left with nothing to push against. This isn't about playing mind games. It's about using space to gather control, both internally and externally. Silence gives you time to breathe, to regulate your energy, to decide what part of their statement, even if it was filled with noise, is actually worth responding to. And it gives them time to stew in the absence of your validation. It's amazing how many people talk themselves into a corner simply because they can't stand that empty air between words. Silence also reframes power dynamics in subtle but essential ways. When you don't rush to fill every moment, you signal that you're not grasping for control. You have it. You're not playing defense. That moment of stillness says, I'll speak when I'm ready. And people notice that. They may not say it out loud, but they feel it. Calm silence becomes a kind of gravitational pull that throws others off their axis. Even in professional environments, this applies. Imagine someone challenges you in a meeting, questions your decision in a forceful tone. The average response is to immediately justify or argue back. But what happens if you just pause, look at them, hold the silence, let them feel the weight of their own question? 9 times out of 10, they start talking again to fill the gap. And when they do, they often water down their own argument or reveal their insecurity. You didn't push back. You just held the line and forced them to blink first. Silence, when used correctly, is active, not passive. It's a decision, not an absence of one. Think of it like a scalpel, not loud, not dramatic, but effective, sharp, and difficult to defend against. It cuts in a way that shouting never will. It also forces you to listen better. When you're not waiting to speak, you hear things that others miss. You start picking up not just what someone is saying, but what they're saying. You hear the cracks in their voice, catch the inconsistencies, notice the shifts in their tone. In the stillness, you become sharper, more attuned, and ultimately more dangerous, because you're no longer just reacting. You're absorbing everything. A lot of people equate leadership, especially in confrontation, with action, with saying the right thing at the right time. But sometimes the most powerful move isn't saying anything at all. It's letting the silence do the heavy lifting. It's letting the uncomfortable space between their aggression and your response remind them that you are not easily moved, not easily rattled. In that way, silence becomes its own form of presence, louder than any raised voice. It also forces your words to matter more when you do choose to speak. If you stay quiet during emotional turbulence and then speak clearly, calmly, and concisely, you cut through the noise. You separate yourself instinctively from the chaos. People listen more carefully because you haven't been flooding the space with unnecessary words. And when you do speak, everything carries more weight, because what is rare is valued. And this is what Machiavelli would understand better than most. Sometimes the mere act of withholding is more potent than forceful assertion. Silence is the leash on your impulse. It's the space for strategy. It's the quiet corner where calm becomes command. In confrontation, it can be as fierce as fire and as precise as a blade. Let others fill space. You hold it. One of the most overlooked advantages in any confrontation is foresight. Most people stumble into conflict thinking only about what's happening in front of them. What was said, what was meant, how they feel in the moment. They react to the surface, but a Machiavellian mindset doesn't operate at the surface level. It looks deeper. It watches the current, not just the waves. And the most powerful mindset shift you can make in confrontation is this: stop thinking about the moment. Start thinking 2, even 3 moves ahead. This kind of thinking is what separates responders from strategists. While your opponent is tangled in emotion, trying to win the present exchange, you're already focused on the outcome. You're asking yourself the questions that matter. What is my goal here? What response from me will lead them into surrender, or cooperation, or exposure? What do I want this moment to lead to? Not just what I want to say right now. Confrontation is never just about conflict itself. It's about direction. Every word you say either builds or burns a path to where you're trying to go. And if you're not careful, if you let impulse take over, you end up sabotaging your own position. That's what happens when someone wins the argument but loses the war. They get so caught up in proving their point that they forget about consequences. They forget that reputations are shaped not just by what you stand for, but by how you handle pressure. You might crush someone in a debate, but if you lose their respect, or worse, the respect of everyone watching, you've lost control of the game. Thinking moves ahead requires discipline. It means not saying the first thing that comes to mind, no matter how clever or cutting it might be. It means recognizing that some moments are bait crafted to trigger you. And if you take that bait, if you fall into their tempo, their anger, their urgency, you've let them script the scene. But when you're thinking strategically, you're not interested in their script. You're writing your own. And this doesn't just apply to verbal confrontation. It applies to the energy you bring into the room. If you know someone feeds on chaos, bring them silence. If they expect resistance, give them curiosity. If they prepare for a fight, answer with calm logic. Why? Because now you control the rhythm. You're already outside of their plan. That alone makes them uneasy, and in that imbalance you create leverage. Think of confrontation like chess. Every piece you move, every phrase you drop, every pause you take isn't about now. It's about next asterisk. Say less, and their imagination fills in the gaps. Ask a question instead of defending yourself, and suddenly they're revealing more than they meant to. Compliment an opponent's strength while quietly dismantling their position from another angle. And now they're disarmed without ever knowing what happened. These aren't tricks. They're tactics, and tactics come from preparation, not emotion, of course. None of this means being cold. It doesn't mean being manipulative in the malicious sense. What it means is recognizing that power during conflict doesn't go to the one who lashes out first. It goes to the one who can still see the board when everyone else is distracted by the sound and fury of the moment. You can't see the board if you're chasing immediate gratification. You can't see the board if all you want is to win the argument. The Machiavellian player isn't focused on winning this exchange. They're focused on winning influence, loyalty, silence, or simply the upper hand when it's most needed. The irony, when you think ahead like this, you often don't even need to confront at all. You can maneuver your opponent into exposing themselves, into overreaching, into defeating their own argument without you lifting a verbal finger. That's what patience and planning allow you to do. They make confrontation a choice, not a compulsion. And when you choose, you're inherently operating from strength. You have to remember that very few people are truly strategic in conflict. Most rely on patterns: yelling when frustrated, making threats when insecure, withdrawing when intimidated. When you break their expectations, you break their rhythm. When you break their rhythm, you break their hold. That's when things shift, not through brute force, but through quiet positioning, through the kind of thinking that sees past the noise and goes directly for the result. And when you operate that way, when you're not obsessing over how you feel, but focusing on where you want to go, your calm isn't forced. It's natural, because when you know you're positioning yourself to win the war, it no longer matters if you lose a single battle. You pick your spots, you speak when it will echo, and you let others exhaust themselves trying to figure out what game you're playing. 2 moves ahead is where leverage lies.